When we are with you, we ask ourselves question of fate bees. We are essentially asking about fate, total of our world, because this miniature dapper, hard-working insect is invisible cornerstone stone, global food, safety and biological equilibrium, disappearance. Everyone bees, including also all wild relatives and other critical important pollinating insects that make up United Functional. The group will not lead to instant apocalypse, but will launch programmed, inevitable chain catastrophic events that throughout several years at first will destroy world rural farm Cyberwork, and then will lead to collapse majority ground ecosystems. And this process will develop in a clear way, predictable stages. The essence of the problem is that bees participate in pollination more than 75%, leading world food crops, and approximately 80% wild flowering plants. That is, they are transport artery for reproduction, practically all flora that does their loss equivalent destruction of basic biological mechanismed lands. It's not just a question. Loss is honey. This is question losses mechanism reproduction plant world, which serves basis all food chain. On the first at this stage, it will certainly be subject to impact, rural economy, and its consequences will be noticeable within 1 or 2 seasons, affecting every continent where bees are used as commercial pollinators. The catastrophe itself will begin with the disappearance vitamins, taste, and variety from ours. Ration, because cultures, completely or to a large extent degrees dependent on bees, will begin sharp reduced productivity, becoming rare or disappearing at all. It is worth noting that, first of all, will come under attack nuts that are one of the most profitable and valuable crops in the world. Production almonds, which is 100% dependent on bees, especially in California, will stop immediately. It will follow sharp fall harvest, hazelnuts and walnuts nut oil, since without cross-pollination, commercial production, these trees will become unprofitable. A similar fate will befall fruits and berries. From ration will disappear, or simply apples, cherries, pears, peaches, strawberries, blueberries and raspberries will become unaffordably expensive, as well as big, part melons and watermelons. Crisis will also affect tropical cultures, especially avocado, which is a key product of world export and completely depends on bees for the ovary fruits. Its disappearance will hit the whole to the producing countries. The world will lose. Also coffee and cocoa, 2 global commercial crops that fully depend on pollination, that will lead to psychological and economic shock because billions of people will lose his own daily stimulant and dessert. We will be forced to switch to monotony nutrition consisting of predominantly from wind-pollinated cereals, wheat, rice, barley, and corn, which in turn pollinated predominantly by the wind. Though bees increase her crop yield, this will not lead to immediate famine because calories we will receive, but it will cause mass deficit microelements, vitamins such as C, A, E, K, and antioxidants, which will lead to a sharp deterioration. Public health, increased incidence, decreased immunity and exacerbation, chronic diseases, and this in turn will fall heavy burden on systems healthcare around the world. However, this is not all, because this whole food shock immediately will grow into a global economic, a crisis that will surpass in scale any famous recession. Agricultural trillion, dollar industry dollars, will lose up to 1/3 his own cost that will cause destabilization world markets. Consequences will be felt far beyond the farms. Loss harvest will lead to mass unemployment in the agricultural sectors, as well as in related industries. Fertilizer production, agricultural technology, transport and processing products, nutrition, in conditions deficit and decline, offers prices for those remaining in production products. Even on wind-pollinated cereals, they will soar to hyperbolic values, provoking social unrest and aggravation conflicts, as access to basic nutrition will become. It is not a question of well-being, but of survival. But that's not all, because in parallel to everything, this will hit the base animal husbandry, because bees are not only food for us, but also food for livestock. So in the second, Critical stage OM is a crisis stern basis. Main crops used for feeding cattle, sheep, and other agricultural animals. Animals such how alfalfa and clover critically depend on beekeeping pollination. Alfalfa, for example, is key source high-quality protein in the diet of dairy and fattening cattle. Without bees' yield, these feed sharp will fall. That will lead to a shortage protein and nutrient substances in the livestock diet. Farmers will have to en masse reduce livestock, since they won't be able to provide animals full-fledged nutrition, and those who will survive give less milk, meat, and more low quality. The entire industry animal husbandry, including production milk, cheese, yogurts, and even wool and skin, will face systemic collapse within 1 to 2 years after disappearances bees, because fundamental chain nutrition will torn apart. Theoretically, humanity will try compensate lost bees' technological solutions, but this attempt is doomed to fail on a large scale. But here manual pollination or robotic drones, despite their prospects, incredible labor-intensive, slow and expensive, and completely impossible scale this a process for millions hectares fields around the world. No technology is capable of replaced by your self-free, self-reproducing army from trillions natural pollinators that only will aggravate economic crisis. However, I want to say that the most irreversible and long-term consequences disappearances bees expect us on the 4th stage, namely in the sphere ecology. And all because after that, how food and economic chains will be torn apart, will begin catastrophic extinction wild flora. Because 80% of all flowering plants will not be able to reproduce without pollinators. This is not just a shortcut numbers. This is loss whole species from landscape during several seasons. Will disappear, thousands. Species of wildflowers, herbs, shrubs, and trees that depend on bees, and their place will not be able to be taken by any other flora, because evolution won't have time. Adapt them to the windshield pollination or other insects. This is mass extinction. Plants inevitably will lead to a trophic cascade. Rapid destruction, everyone's subsequent food chains. Disappearance flowers will deprive food. Set herbivores, insects, such as butterflies, beetles, and moths. In turn, birds, small mammals, and reptiles that feed on these insects will be deprived his own stern bases and will begin en masse starve. Then wave extinction will reach specialized predators, violating the most complex interaction networks that maintain balance in nature. But we also shouldn't forget that even biodiversity sharp will shrink, and the world will not just become poorer, it will become quieter, gray, and monochrome, having lost much of its part, his own natural, colorful difficulties. The landscape will be transformed. It will begin desertification and degradation soils due to lost root cover. Ecosystems that were added up millions of years, they won't be able to adapt to the disappearance of such a critical link, like bees. As a result, we see that the death of bees is not just a loss harvest for 1 year. This is irreversible change absolutely our entire planet, transforming her in less hospitable living environment. Everyone complex organisms, including human being. But I also ask you to note that in addition to this crisis, food and ecology, disappearance bees will inflict a critical blow to the pharmaceutical and specialized industries industry. About dependence, which we often forget. And all because there is a multitude medicinal and phytotherapeutic plants used in both traditional and modern medicine, are flowering and require pollination for reproduction and high concentrations active substances. This includes key ingredients for herbal fees, as well as important plants, from which stand out connections for modern drugs, for example, to fight cancer or cardiovascular diseases. Loss of these plants not only will deprive humanity access to thousands of years of accumulated phytotherapeutic wisdom, but it will also slow down scientific research. New medicines, because genetic diversity these plants supported bees, will lost. Moreover, it will suffer. Textile and cosmetic industry. For example, possible say that, although cotton can self-pollinate, Cross-pollinate pollination bees significantly increases its yield and fiber quality. Sharp fall cotton harvest will create tensions on the world stage market's textiles. Similarly, production ethereal oils and natural flavorings such as lavender, mint, citrus essences, all of this based on flowering crops that will become rare, that will lead to higher prices for cosmetics, perfumes, and food additives. Thus, we are already seeing the death of bees will affect not only our stomach, but also our medicine cabinet, clothes, and everyday aesthetics, proving once again that their role permeates all areas of human life. Of course, these are not all the areas that will be destroyed by the catastrophic disappearance of bees, but they are the largest and most important. So today we see that the disappearance everyone bees will launch systemic collapse that has no technical solutions on a modern scale. On the first stage, world diet will lose majority fruits, nuts, and vegetables that will cause deficit vitamins and economic shock. Then will follow crisis animal husbandry and the failure of technological pollination solutions. The most scary is ecological chain reaction, extinction of 80% of wild flora and subsequent destruction food chains that will lead to mass degradation, landscapes, and irreversible lost biodiversity. Thus, we can conclude that bees are really a foundation our civilization and nature, so that their loss-equivalent shutdown systems life support planets